What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Outcast Haven deck profile. Today, it's myself, Blake, joined by Dane, and we will be talking through Dane's pet project so far in Monarch, which is the Prism deck that we've had on stream. We've had it on some gameplay videos. So we're going to go through it. Dane's going to give us thoughts. I've been just kind of giving feedback back and forth, helping with the testing process. Dane has been, this is his brainchild, so he's going to give us his thoughts behind it, and we'll discuss some of the things. So Dane, why don't you give us just a quick rundown of your thoughts? Like when your first thoughts building Prism, what kind of ran through your head and how you built it out?
Yeah, so I think the first initially what I thought the main push was going to be, and so far it's been pretty true, is figuring out how flexible you want to make the deck list itself. Because I think like it does fit that toolboxy thing that I thought it was going to be when we started seeing the spoilers revealed. But you can't like solve every single problem, right? So it's sort of looking at, I think a lot of our conversation has been, how do you mitigate the matchups are going to be a real problem for it? Like, how do you make Dory not like a 2080? Like just things like that. So that was initially, I wanted to at least put together a deck that was, it performed, whether it was
Mm-hmm.
performing outstanding every single game or if it was, I just wanted to avoid the deck not functioning was really my goal with something new that was like brand new archetype, wanting to have something on the table that wasn't going to lead to me getting embarrassed playing it. So that was sort of my jump off point. And as we went, sort of getting a sense of what her strengths are and being able to lean into those. I've actually been surprised a couple times at how much she can change her play style with like a 12 card sideboard. Like just the
Mm-hmm.
drastic change from like being an aura control-y build to take out the auras or a significant number of the auras and then throw in some extra like heavy hitters and just the amount that you're able to adjust your play style into different matchups is super fun, and that's probably been the biggest learning curve. I think the deck is to the point now where I'm just learning, like I'm learning how to play it. At no point do I feel like I am hindered by the deck. I think I just will come out of a game and think I need to learn how to play this matchup better or watch out for this line or prep
Mm-hmm.
for this game state so that when we get to this game state, I actually have the tools in my deck still that I need because she does all of that really well. She pitches a ton. Like you can easily set up your deck for late game. So like getting those things hammered out is sort of where I feel this deck is right now, at least with how I've been playing it. So, but definitely leave your comments, things you see that I'm not running. Like there might be a reason that I don't include it in like the deck and the way that I'm playing it. But also there might not be, and I might have just not thought of that yet. So leave comments if you're like, dude, how come you're not running X card? Because I would love to keep seeing input like that.
Yeah, this is a really interesting deck and just how it's like structured compared to a lot of other decks as far as how it's built out and how it functions and operates kind of along the way. So let's start with the loadout. You only have the one weapon, Luminaris. I think that's a weapon that it's funny because like the majestic weapons and the other for the other classes have been kind of we've tested around with them. None of them seem overly great or overly, better or worse than like a common weapon or something else. But Luminaris is absolutely like snapped in half in this deck, especially in some
Mm-hmm.
matchups where you get a ton of shields out and a couple auras out and people can't do anything about the auras. It's basically just like a punch in the face because like playing Bravo into it, Bravo can't really clear the auras enough. So next thing you know, you're just like taking 6 times a turn, which is feels worse than taking, 6 1 time for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that ninja effect, right? It's the
Yeah.
whole God, I'm not blocking this one. God, I'm not blocking this one. And then before you know it, you're like, and I've taken 32 damage from once.
Yeah, it's pretty
Um,
it's pretty brutal.
yeah, I mean, in early iterations, like just throwing stuff against the wall to see what stuck. I know we were toying with siding, or I was toying with siding in the I don't
Iris.
even know what the other weapon's called. Yeah, Iris of Reality. But it's so not worth it Like this, like
Mm-hmm.
Luminaris is just, if there ever were a broken weapon next to like Dawnblade, right? I think that it's probably Luminaris. Like just the effect of having a yellow in pitch, giving all of your illusionist attacks go again.
Yeah.
Even in games where you're not swinging with auras, the on like all of your phantasm attacks is just silly. Like that game that we
Mm-hmm.
just for fun, Jason's like, I'm playing, I want to try Wizard and CC, and it was literally like turn 2 and I killed him because it was just Herald of Erudition into hitting because he can't pop and blocking and drawing 2 cards, going into my soul, swinging like having go again on the
Mm-hmm.
erudition because of the of the
The weapon.
Luminaris and being able to drop another 6 attack or 7 attack, and it's just silly amounts of damage that you can do.
Yeah, the Arcanite Skullcap is purely a block value thing. It's just
Yeah.
making sure that the deck is able to kind of protect itself. Dreamweavers is there obviously because that's insane. Just being able to take away Phantasm when you need it. The Ironhide Gauntlet and Legs again is just more protection in certain matchups and basically just sided in over Footsteps and the Tunic. Talk about, I think the only two things I think I'm interested that I think are important to touch on is why Tunic over the Vestige of Soul, and then
Mhm.
just how good, like when you switch the stuff, like the different types, how you when you
Yeah,
go
yeah. So
defensive.
yeah. So my when I look at equipment, I basically when I was making that initial deck, I just wanted to put together the operating deck, right? So like the baseline, the thing that was going to function in theory, right? So it's the skull cap, the tunic, the Dreamweavers, and the footsteps. So that's like my core equipment. So stuff that you swap into outside of that, you've got the Ironhide Gauntlet, which the the Dreamweavers are really nice, but they're a one-off effect, and it really in a game that you basically what you're doing going into any matchup with Prism is you're judging how much are they going to be able to stop my Phantasm with 6 attacks and be able to still put on pressure. But like if you're going into Levia, like Dreamweavers might be important, but I kind of just err on the side of going auras with Levia. And if that's the way you're playing it, Dreamweavers are kind of a meh ad because you're not going to be relying a ton on getting Phantasm attacks through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one argument and the thing that I'm still testing is leaving them because sometimes like a well-timed Herald of Erudition that like that can hit actually and being able to draw those cards and get that additional pressure or let you build another aura, um, that is still something that I'm toying with. But from what I've found, Levi is a pretty straightforward matchup, just playing auras into it. So
Mm-hmm.
really not reliant on the Phantasm plays at all. So I like the gauntlets there for the extra defense. Same concept for the legs. Honestly, the legs and gauntlets initially got added in there just for the Dorinthia matchup because footsteps, like you're never gonna block with them because Dory's gonna pop those all day, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
any attack that has over 6 power pop like breaks them at the end of it. So which is basically every Dorinthia attack threatens that. And then the Dreamweavers, like you don't need to like she if she hits you with a Command and Conquer to block like blocks with a Command and Conquer to pop, like that's fine because that's one of her 3/6 attacks in the deck, most likely. Or if they're siding in a bunch of 6 attacks, you're kind of winning already, anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, winning by
So,
them having a less efficient deck is always
right.
something that I think you're going to see in Prism. Where I think some people will make their decks worse to try and not lose to Prism.
Yeah,
So, going into the
absolutely.
deck, speaking of Command and Conquer, that's where we kind of
Yeah.
start. Is you got two Command and Conquer in here. So talk about that.
Yeah, I honestly like the deck space is pretty tight because I'm currently playing it with the mindset of swapping into like two pretty varied play styles. So I've got my 60, my core 60 that I built out that is aura. I would say the core of this build is aura centric. Like it's running the and we'll see it as we go through like the Genesis, the um uh, Ode to Wrath, Parable of Humility, Merciful Retributions. But I wanted to in matchups that weren't going to give me time to set up, like going into chain, going into like where the aura build was going to be more of a struggle for sure, Dorinthia. But Matt Rogers had some comments where I'm like, I need to relook at how Prism plays into Dorinthia, because he's saying like that's basically an unwinnable matchup, and am I'm hard pressed not to believe him. So I gotta check that out and figure out what he's doing there, or what they're doing over there in their testing. But um, yeah, I wanted to be able to, in matchups where I didn't think the 6 attack or 6 power attack was going to be prevalent in the opponent's deck, I wanted to be able to run Phantasm Heavy and just go really
Mm-hmm.
aggressive. So I actually put um, Command and Conquers, um, 2 Celestial Cataclysms, just more of those like bigger threats in the sideboard. And the deck space was tight, so I just didn't want to, because I think it's a 12 card like swap is what I've got,
Mm-hmm.
because I've got 8 equipment including the weapon, and then I've got 12 leftover cards that are not in the initial aura build. So looking at Command and Conquers, Celestial
Mm-hmm.
Cataclysms.
Honestly, they're actually kind of important in the mirror because maybe if you run into like a prism mirror, you might actually have an ability to pop something versus another prism player might not even run 6 attacks that aren't phantasm. So just being able to do that and
Mhm.
having some non-phantasm and non-illusionist attacks that could potentially pop theirs gives you a little bit of a leg up at the mirror. And command and conquer is always good, like surprising someone with a command and conquer if you have just a huge hand, and being able to play a herald and then go a command and conquer on the back of it, and just making them kind of block basically their whole hand to not let you have some sort of effect from it is
Mhm.
is really valuable. You went with we've just got the 3 red prismatic shield in there, which I think is obviously just that's more of like a cost curve thing to not put in yellows and
Yeah.
blues. Yellow is
Yeah,
good
I really
because
went.
yellow is really functional in the deck, but not having the cost curve is kind of gross on 2 for 3.
Mhm. So I looking at looking at what my deck is actually consisting of is my yellows and blues. Obviously auras are yellow, but pretty much everything I pay for is paid for with a herald. There's not really a whole lot of deck space, because it's so powerful to be able to look at your hand and say, which herald do I want to play based on the knowledge that my opponent's given me, because
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 heralds in my hand right now. All of them pay for them like each other if I need them to, right? So, or is this an aura placement turn? So I like that flexibility, and putting more prismatic shields. They like the yellows and blues turn into cards that you never want to play. You just want to pay with,
Mm-hmm.
because the paying 3 to get 2 prismatics might be worth it. Like that's something that I honestly haven't even tested yet, because I've found that the red prismatic shields to get 3 shields out is plenty. I don't feel like I'm ever in a position where I wish I could make 2. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
late game, and I could see an argument for like having the like 2 or maybe 3 yellows that you pitch. I honestly don't know about the deck space for 3, but being able to pitch them early and then late game with like a merciful retribution out, being able to make them an instant speed to like ping back a couple arcane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, which is honestly one of the plays I use the reds for, right? If I'm not
Yeah.
putting on aggression with them and paying to drop 3 with my 2 auras already out and swinging for 5, the deck doesn't allow for the yellows and blues right now, but definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, you have to be kind of careful too about like bogging the deck down too much with instants, because in the
Mm-hmm.
aura build you're running such a heavy instant focus deck anyway that you have to be careful not to get kind of trapped. So the first 2 instants that we see and the auras that we see are, you got 2 Arclight Sentinel and 3 of the Genesis. I think the Genesis is so good in the deck that you want to see it early, you want to see it all the time. I know your feelings on Arclight are like kind of back and forth. It's like one of those cards that I feel like when it's good, it's beyond good. It's like godlike. And when it's bad, it's just so bad. It feels super clunky because it is a 6. It's a really expensive card when you're running a yellow
Yeah.
heavy deck. But I think into some of the bigger matchups, when they trigger an action before they go into their big attack, like a Bravo or a Rhino or a Levia, if they trigger something before they take their big attack, being able to throw
Mm-hmm.
Arclight Sentinel in front of it is absolutely insane.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a yellow. It's something that gets pulled out when it's a matchup where I'm not going to really care about blocking attacks, or like they're not going to have like a giant threat like Bravo, Levia, Rhinar. Like they're gonna have this card played against them. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely running this card in those matchups, but I just it is a 6. It does feel boggy to have, like, God forbid you see two of these. Like there's a game where I saw two of these same turn, and I was like, the problem I found with Arclight Sentinel is that even if, because I do run energy potions, even if you have an energy potion out, you're basically saying, all right, I'm gonna stop your turn, but I'm also stopping my next turn,
Mm-hmm.
which means that we're just delaying a turn and then you're going to come at me full hand again. So like Arclight Sentinel feels like kind of iffy, just buying you a turn when you're not necessarily playing the fatigue game into,
Mm-hmm.
someone's deck. So yeah, that's my only reason it's at a 2, and it doesn't block for anything. So I mean, it's an amazing effect. It's great, but not super in love with it.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing too is to look at the deck is that when you look at all the Herald cards that you have most of them at like a yellow and a blue, other than Wartune Herald, which you have all three in, and that's just a cost curve thing, right? Like that's the fact that
Mm-hmm.
it's a one cost, so it's just so efficient at one, and because it goes to your soul, it kind of forces a block out of somebody to
Mm-hmm.
give up something in order to not let you have soul, which is actually really good in this deck at certain points in time.
Yeah. Yep. And right now, like actually what's being tested now is like I'm running Enigma Chimeras in there, and I kind of want to just drop those and add in like a couple two ofs of the reds for other heralds that I want to see more often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's just because right now the deck is humming right along. Basically, I can play an aura whenever I see it, or I can pitch it to make play it again late game. But I'm never I think I found a sweet spot for resources to being able to play what I want without having like a ton of excess, which feels really good. Now I think I get to start pushing that. How can I get a little more teeth into this deck
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that I have that available to me when I want it?
Yeah, making the efficiency like Enigma Chimera is good just simply because it's a good cost curve. It's a 2 for 6 or 7,
Mm-hmm.
which is strong because a lot of them are 2 for 6 or 2 for 5, but their effects are really good. Whereas like that's that classic fab balancing where they're like you're not going to get a big effect off it, so we're going to buff the power maybe a little bit on the
Mm-hmm.
curve. So we go down, and Erudition's really good, Judgment's really good. Like the Phantasm's almost at this point, like you're more looking at the balance and the cost curve effect of them than you
Mm-hmm.
are actually their effects, because you're going to run pretty much all of them at this point. I don't think there's any that are really like pull them at least early
I mean,
on.
Herald of Judgment comes out pretty often if I'm just playing into like a non-shadow, because if you're not going to play stuff from
Yeah.
Banish Zone, like even like getting the timing down to like actually stop a Dorinthia from playing a attack reaction from her
Mm-hmm.
Banish Zone, or stopping a Katsu or something. Like I mean, into Katsu, yeah, there's an argument to run Herald for sure of Judgment, but yeah, I mean it comes out pretty often. If you look at, are you looking at Herald of Triumph right now?
Yep.
So that is the one. That's the one where I am looking. How can I get the three reds in there? And that's probably going to be where Enigma Chimera comes out, just because the innate mitigation of the Phantasm, like you just
Mm-hmm.
like attacks blocking it have -1, which is just it's a built-in light beam or whatever they call that.
Blinding beam.
So yeah, blinding beam. So yeah, I think that Herald of Triumph is definitely one of my faves too.
Yeah, that the minus is really strong just because it allows you to have that ability to play a little more loose and free into some of the decks that have 6 power cards, because you kind of do to them what you do to a lot of other decks, which says, I know you probably only have 3 or maybe 6 7 powers, so I'm kind of daring you to have the 7 power now in order to pop it,
Mm-hmm.
because the 6 power is not going to be enough, which is really, really strong in the deck. The auras. So let's talk about the auras, because I think that's one of the most
Yeah.
interesting things and the most interesting interactions in the deck, because it can be absolutely punishing when paired correctly. Like I think Ode to Wrath paired with like the ping of the deck is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely staggeringly oppressive at times. And I think when you can set it up correctly, where you go wide with your spectral shields and then you're able to just kind of pour in one, 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 one,
Mm-hmm.
and then they lose another one, lose another one, lose another one on the back of it, it becomes really strong.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to see is an Ode to Wrath that comes on the backside of maybe playing something else or swinging or whatever, and I'll arsenal it. And if I draw into the spectral shields, I am I am just taking whatever you throw at me, because the next turn I'm going to, at the end of your turn, play the Ode of Wrath from Arsenal. And with the deck resource count, like, I have the resources to then also, having played the Ode to Wrath, play the Prismatic Shields and be able to swing for 4. And if you let any of those through, you lose an additional life.
Mm-hmm.
And on the backside, whenever you come at me, I've got 3 Spectral Shields out and now an aura that you need to swing into. And if I can, on the backside of my attacking turn, draw into a Merciful Retribution, you swing into me and I drop the Merciful Retribution. Now you're taking 3 pings from popping my Prismatics.
Mm-hmm.
And if you let any of those pings through, you lose a life from Ode to Wrath. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, some of these combinations are really silly. And if you know to, like, be on the lookout for them, or know that you pitched something, like, if you know that you pitched the pieces to that early,
Mm-hmm.
that can be really, really backbreaking late game. And like, I've won multiple games where I win off of Merciful Retribution. Merciful Retribution is probably my favorite aura, just because of the unexpected clapback that it offers, which is really fun. Like,
Yeah.
that is, Prism's got so many silly, fun, like, little lines that she can do that are just unexpected,
Mm-hmm.
that are just, it's just fun and exciting when you get them to fire. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love Merciful Retribution.
She has a really good ability to kind of surprise you with damage, which is always a good thing in this game where the damage isn't calculable. And that's something that obviously, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that this set particularly has done pretty well, is add kind of a, it's harder to math out your opponent's turns. It's less about I have this and you have, the best you could do is this or the worst you could do is that. This set
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of these interactions where you're starting to have to think about kind of like the meta damage, where it's like you have to think about all the little things that kind of could sneak in throughout a play that could cause instances of damage that are problematic. And
Mm-hmm.
it's super, super, super good. Parable of Humility, I think, is in some matchups going to be crazy, just because if somebody throws a 4 at you, you turn a 3 into a full block card to protect your spectral shields, which is something that I
Mm-hmm.
think is important to note for anybody listening that doesn't know. Spectral shields are a damage replacement effect. I know a lot of people think they pop first and then you block damage, but the spectral shields are all the way at the end. So if you
Yep.
have 3 spectral shields out, someone attacks you for 6. If you block all 6, they don't touch your spectral shields, so you're able to protect them and swing back, which is important because sometimes it's worth blocking all their damage just to pitch a
Mm-hmm.
yellow to make another one off of a soul, so you can use the ability of Luminaris to then just swing with all your auras and your spectral shields to create a damage that's just like, you, like, to your point, Dane, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
that slow bleed Kadachi death where you're like 1 1 1 1 1, and you'll see Dane sometimes where
Yeah.
he just, I'm gonna swing at you for 1 6 times, so do whatever you want with them, and we'll just be like,
Uh,
it's lots of fun to hear that. So, um,
yep.
rounding out the end of the deck, I think the heralds at the bottom are just more heralds and they're good, but
Yep.
the cards that I think are important to talk about are Energy Potion, Soul Shield, Phantasmify, and the spiciest of spices, the card nobody plays, the Yellow Pummel. So Energy Potion is a helpful resource, right? Because you do play a lot of instants. It's a blue. It's good to pitch, and it can kind of stand there and wait for something that you need the extra resources for.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So a lot of times what you'll find is you don't need every card in hand, and like, so, like, the auras being a forecast, like, it just, if you ever see an energy potion, chances are you're still going to be able to play an aura or swing an attack or state somewhat, maybe even still arsenal a card after playing down an energy potion. And
mhm.
the energy potion, being able to just gain those resources as an instant and allowing you to play an aura on the back end of your opponent's turn before it comes over to you, or because a lot of times what I've found is there's a lot of consideration for when you actually pay to make things, because you really want to see that yellow in your pitch zone on your turn.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, excuse me, so you can't always just like willy-nilly um make a spectral shield from your soul if it's, your one yellow card in your hand because you got three blues and a yellow.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't like just throw that out on your opponent's turn. You need to save that and be able to, because a lot of times there's not there are hands where you don't really have anything to pay for,
Mm-hmm.
or you can't pay for your one. Like if you do have three blues and a yellow, and the yellow is the aura that you want to play, it's like, okay, I'm going to play this, but now I'm not going to have a yellow in my pitch. I'm not going to have go again.
Mm-hmm.
So just having that flexibility to have a couple extra floating resources for when you really need them to pay for something without using your one yellow in hand to pay for it, um, can be really nice. And honestly, I use it primarily for the Arclight Sentinel play, just because it makes that eating of the hand a little less painful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think that Energy Potion's got a place in Commanding or Classic Constructed for Prism.
Yeah, I think you're able to play a little more. The pace is better, which is really good. Soul Shield is just really good because it gives you more. It's a yellow to pitch if you want to pitch it,
Mm-hmm.
but also it's really good because it's a 6 block that gives you a soul, which then
Mm-hmm.
triggers your ability to continue to make spectral shields, which is super super good. And then
Yep.
Phantasmify, being able to just buff an attack huge and going with the yellow. I think sometimes people get enamored with like red like reactions or red actions that like buff things because they're the biggest buff. But in this deck, it's
Mm-hmm.
all about that like pitch curve. It's all about having yellow in the pitch, and Phantasmify kind of fulfills a lot of different things in the deck that it needs to have
Mm-hmm.
to function really efficiently.
Yeah, and the thing like so Yellow Pummel made its way in there because the Phantasm attacks, if you know that they're going through, they're already big enough where they're taking possibly three cards from hand anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So just buffing it up to a three and making them pay for their defense reaction or drop their last card from hand, which happens to be a defense, whatever. Like I can't think of a situation where that would be the case, but being able to hit that and then make them discard it, because like if you think about it, just it's you swing with a 7 attack Phantasm and then pummel it, it's a 10. So
Yeah.
that's you're taking their
Huge.
hand, right? Like, and that's with the yellow, which if you don't want to see it or you don't want to hold the red or you don't want to have that like that weird math going on, like you can just pitch it and see it late game. So I do like the yellow. And yeah, the soul shield too, giving yourself that thing to spend resources on
Mm-hmm.
is key, because Prism does, or this build at least, can suffer offensively from not having soul. Because if you're focused on building auras out and you don't see your merciful retribution that's putting auras that pop into your soul, if you're missing some of those key pieces, like you haven't, or they pop your Genesis early or whatever, like being able to defend and then have that soul go in and be able to make that spectral shield from the soul, because you can't just spend a yellow for no reason to give your auras go again. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have something to spend it on. So that's super nice late game too. So I'll pitch soul shields early game quite often.
Yeah, the in the 6 defense is no joke. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
unmovable that has the effects you need in the deck for the deck to be efficient, which is something that I think they did really well in this set, is giving light and giving shadow their own defense reactions that have unmovable size blocks, and they're efficient in the decks and allow the decks to kind of function. And I love the pummel because it's a yellow, but I also think that like the thing people miss about the pummel too is like the triggering of go again happens at the end of turns. Like all of those kind of things happen at the end of turns. So you can technically, right, you can pitch a red for something like the War Tune Herald, pitch a red to play it. Somebody will assume, okay, so like this is the one they're gonna do.
No go again. Yep.
I'll take it. Then you pitch the other yellow in your hand to play a pummel. Now you've got a
Mm-hmm.
yellow in your pitch. You probably just hit them for somewhere between 8 and 10, and now you have go again, and your turn just kind of went wide
They're
open if you
dropping a
have
card.
spectral.
Yep.
Yep, they're losing a card, and then you can just go spectral, spectral, spectral for 3, and all of a sudden they're just bleeding tons of life. They're losing cards, and the turn can like it's that classic turn
You can snowball.
where it really snowballs out of hand and it's really strong. So that's pretty much that's Prism 1.0. I know we talked about when we did Jason's. This is a 1.0. We're gonna come back with like 1.1s, 1.2s, maybe a 2.0 if we have like a huge chunk of time between maybe one of our decks. We don't know. We're not sure yet, but that's Prism 1.0. We will leave the description, or in the description, we'll go ahead and throw a link to the deck for you. I know Jason and I talked. We're going to try and make sure we leave like this version of the deck alone so that the link is always attached to this deck. We'll create a new list when we do our next list so that all the links will stay true to like the specific list that you're watching a deck tech for. If you haven't liked and subscribed, we would appreciate that. We would love it. We go live all the time on Tuesdays with our live streams. We've got our podcast every Friday, and we'll continue to put out gameplay for Monarch. And we're gonna just we're grinding hard. We're trying to adult and still like squeeze in every chance we get to record these things so we can continue to give you guys content. If you've got input on the deck, we would love to hear it. Like I said, we're continuing to work on these decks and grind them out and continuing to try and edit them and make them better and better so we can give you high quality deck profiles that you can go and do well in events in events with. So thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Dane, thank you for sharing your child with us, your baby, and we'll continue to show you more next time. So we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, guys. Peace.